Angela De Giacomo, if I say that right, who is the investment manager of the Bissell family in Delhi and here in Berlin. And you will be talking to our star guest, Shardha Sharma, who will be now in India and is the CEO and founder of YourStory Media, which is basically the biggest technology platform for startups in India. Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, everyone, for having me here, in particular the Berlin Senate and Dr. Rainer Seider. And thanks for enpact for making this possible. I'm really looking forward to talking to Shardha Sharma. She's a startup heroine in India, and what she's done there is she has built from 0 to 1 a media company that now has more than 14 million people observing and reading all her news on a monthly basis. And she does that with a very dedicated team of 115 employees. And I'm very proud to and honored to be able to talk to her from Germany to India. Hello, Shradha.
Hello, Angela. I am also very excited to be talking to you and being part of this first digital AsiaBerlin summit. Thank you for having me here.
Normally, you would have come here to Berlin in June, and we were all looking forward to it. You would have done one of the opening remarks and keynote speaks at the Asia Pacific Weeks, which are now renamed into AsiaBerlin Summit. And we hope we will get to see you here in September. You came to Germany, if I recall it correctly, for the first time in 2016. So what brought you here, and what kind of relationship have you built with Dr. Rainer Seider and also the Berlin Senate and this program?
Angela, yes, you are right. I came to Germany in 2016, and the first person, just to go on record, when I landed and came to the hotel, the first person I met was you, because I was connected to you through the German embassy here in India. And I had come first because the German government has a program where they invite professional, journalists, influencers from 16, 17 different countries to come and experience the socio-cultural aspects of the country, and also what is happening in the for digitalization. So I was part of that program, and through the government I met, it was a week-long program. I met interesting people from the government and just got a sense of Germany, but more importantly of Berlin, and I fell in love with Berlin, and that only kept on growing with my interaction with you. And then Dr. Rainer, he's an absolutely admirable person with so many nuances to me in all the people that I met in Germany, because when you are away, the thing that you hear is Germans are known for precision, they are known for, they're very, very advanced, it's a very industrialized country. But when you go close and get to know the country, then you realize that any country, and more so as of now we are realizing in this COVID world, that country is made of people. And I met some very, very fantastic, amazing, genuine, authentic people in Germany, and that helped me develop a very close relationship. I have been coming regularly to Germany, doing a lot of engagements, and last year I had a chance meeting with your Premier Angela Merkel, and it was one of the most fantastic and most memorable experience in my life, having to meet her and having to get a chance to talk to her one-on-one. So yeah, I'm an absolute fangirl of Germany, and more so Berlin. So great to be talking to you.
Yeah, speaking of Chancellor Merkel, I remember how you were describing your meeting with her. You have met many world leaders. You've also met Mr. Macron from France. You are a startup evangelist also with your own Prime Minister, Mr. Modi. Let's speak about the startup ecosystem at the moment. You are in Bangalore. You're in the office at the moment. The numbers for startup investments last quarter were around 6 billion. And from what I'm reading from your own platform and KPMG and others, is that in Q1 2020, the numbers have dropped to 2.2 billion, which is still a significant number. Can you shed some light on what is happening in the startup ecosystem in India at the moment?
Yeah, Angela, and you are, you know, you would be very aware because you actively also invest here in India, in the Indian startups. I would say that when you look at India, then one of the most important lenses to look at India is not to look at from, you know, of course, quarters and months become extremely important, but India is, you know, a market which is a long-term growing market. And if you look at it historically and now just because of COVID, of course, it's a very different market, but the market has been growing phenomenally. We have the largest digital user base outside of China in the world. We have 750 million people who own mobile. We have 400 million active WhatsApp users. The kind of consumer that we have in this country is, and the consumer which is consuming digital infrastructure is unprecedented in the world. And because of that, there is a huge interest in investing in startups. And over the years, we have seen billions of dollars. You know, the last calculation that we did in the last, if you look at last 7 to 8 years itself, India has seen around 45 to 50 billion dollars being invested in the startup space. And I don't see that anytime soon getting slowing down. It will only increase, as you would have seen that we saw one of the most historic and large deal happen in India just last week. The announcement came where Facebook took 9% of shares in Geo for $5.7 billion. Now, what it means is that it creates, again, a huge layer, an infrastructure layer for a lot of startups to reach this consumer base, which I was talking to you about, right? We have 1.3 billion people in this country. We have 750 million people using technology in some way or the other. And we have active smartphone users, 450 million people. So now with this kind of an infrastructure, this kind of partnership, which was announced last week, it shows to me certain signals. One, from Facebook, which is again a very large American corporate now, startup come corporate, if they are investing this kind of money in India, it shows very clearly that where are they putting their eggs for the future growth, right? And this is the market where, if you look at where the money is coming, because of the consuming capacity and the growing consuming capacity. And also, if you see that our GDP is growing. If you look at, you know, we are aiming that in the next 2-3 years, if all goes well, then we should be a $5 trillion economy. So if you look at all those macro aspects, then you'll see that startups become the natural engine of growth in a country like India. And we will see a lot more investments happening. As I was talking to a lot of investors here in this country, it's a lockdown phase for us right now, but a lot of deals are already happening, and some of the VCs have gone on record to say that they are going to be investing around, you know, all of them individually as VC firms. They're saying that they will be investing in 50-60 deals this year. So if you look at the number of VCs that operate in this country, I don't see, even with the slowdown this year, we will have deals up to 700 to 800 investments in the startups happening this year.
I mean, if you say that, it means a lot, because you're also you're also organizing one of the largest and most important tech events in Bangalore every year, Tech Sparks, and you speak to the who's who of the tech entrepreneurs and startup ecosystem. So, but coming back to I would love to dive deeper into Reliance Jio and Facebook deal, almost $6 billion deal, but I would suggest everyone looks it up on the news who's not heard about it yet. But coming to your core work, I mean, you tell stories of entrepreneurs and you make those stories matter. What can you tell us from all the conversations that you have had in the last 6 weeks about resilient leadership? I mean, you yourself are orchestrating a team, all sitting at home with more than 100 employees. What can you tell us, like 3-4 things that you have noticed from other outstanding leaders in India about resilient leadership?
Yeah, Angela, this is a very good question. You know, one of the first thing that came to my mind when you look at all the leaders who have really embraced this change and are head on dealing with what it means at ground level, because things have come to a complete standstill, and I think you'll understand, world over we are all experiencing this. The complete lockdown means that everything is like, suddenly not what it was. So what I've seen some outstanding leaders, young leaders do, one is that the way they have planned, the business planning, how quickly the agility, we keep on hearing about agility as a word, and agility management and all that, and flexibility, but I've seen that some of the smartest leaders, they have very quickly changed, and they have very quickly done the planning, got everyone online together as a team, and have started working as wartime CEOs, the word which is, we've been all hearing about it, wartime CEOs. So they have started working like that, because unfortunately situations like this don't give you that bandwidth and that time to think and plan. But how do you do planning on the go and change things? So one, the speed, if I may say so, has been one of the very critical factors that I have noticed. Second thing is that how people have used and leveraged different partners, different ecosystem players, aligned them quickly. And I think that's why somewhere, we give a lot of, and that second thing that came to my mind is that we give a lot of importance to individual entrepreneurs. We give a lot of importance to individual businesses and startups. But in situations like this, you realize that it's not just the individual, it's the, group and the community which has to come together. So what was very interesting, especially in Indian startup ecosystem, which I found, is that a lot of startups together, they collaborated. A lot of investors jumped in to collaborate and support. So it was more of a, if I may say a military squad, where, you had one smart leader aligning a lot of other people around him or her. And that became magical, if I may say so, because you were then able to do things, right? Like, for example, one of the big things for startups right now is cutting costs and looking at your own infrastructure cost, your cloud infrastructure, your salary expenses. How do you deal with that? So then how do you involve different stakeholders to make that happen? Like, for example, I don't want to particularly name the cloud infrastructure providers, but a lot of them jumped to say, what kind of different plannings can we give you? What are the different kind of scenarios in which you could pay, or, so those things aligning, I saw some of the resilient entrepreneurs able to do that very quickly and harness the power of the community around them. And third, I would say, which was very, very important, and in India, is we all work very hard in our country. Like, I'm very proud the way we work, but somewhere I think this COVID world has also made us realize the power of productive working and working with very clear outcomes in mind. So when the survival becomes a critical issue, and in our case as startups, survival is far more critical, because we're not large corporates with money in the bank. So here, when the survival becomes critical, I've seen some of the most outstanding leaders have a very laser focus on what are the two things that matter, what are the three things that matter, and then going after it in a very, very, very productive, fast-paced way, and cutting the noise, cutting cutting the noise, and more importantly, cutting some of the things which you thought were important, but in this world you see more in more black and white format, and realize, oh, these things did not matter. Like, again, a very crude example to say that you realize that maybe you could do this with 100 people, but suddenly most of the entrepreneurs and some of the sharp entrepreneurs, they're saying that, hey, we could do this now with 20 people, but we also have 60 people, 80 people more to take care of. Which are the other critical functions we can put them in? So, that kind of that builds your resilience muscles. And I'm seeing such outstanding work by some of these young Indian entrepreneurs right now.
I think we could go on, and 15 minutes which they've dedicated to us is not enough. So unfortunately, we are running out of time, and I urge everyone to just follow your story, follow your webinars. You're giving lots of good advice also on a new series called Money Matters. And the last point I want to make is every entrepreneur out there, everyone who was dreaming about becoming an entrepreneur, please also have a look at Your Story Academy. All experts and players of the ecosystem are mentioned there. And for now, thank you for listening to us, and thanks, Shradha, for all the insights. Bye.
You know, Angela, before you go, sorry, I'm going to take 1 minute more to say, you know, this Asia Berlin Summit is very important. But more importantly, what I want to bring out is that in this moment, if we all take time to reflect on the roles human beings, we as human and our goodness plays. And I want to thank you, because you have, to me, have been a very strong missionary, if I may say so, of India and of Germany, of Berlin to India. And that brings us so much closer. And that leads to so many things. And I've seen the kind of impact, that kind of understanding, that kind of listening to the other person, listening to people across different geographies creates that tangible impact that it creates. And I really want to thank you for doing that, because it has helped me and so many entrepreneurs here in this country. And I also want to thank Dr. Rainer, because to me, he's one of the most eloquent storytellers that I met in Berlin. And I think all these stories bring us all so close. And I hope that this closeness only increases with time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela, and also Shradha, for these absolutely amazing insights. It's always amazing to hear the numbers of India, but also about India's digitalization and especially the startup scene.